when the world has got you down. And
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alz, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and me, Don Priest.
Hello, everybody. I'm Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Don Priest, and this is Love Conquers Alz. Hello, Susan.
Hello, Donald. How's it going today? We're having a great day.
We're having a great day. Having a superb
Wonderful.
day.
Yes.
You know, it seems to be, even though we don't know when people will be listening to this, but for us it's Friday, which means absolutely
Yes.
nothing because we work all weekend anyway. So, but
Yes,
happy
yeah.
Friday.
Happy
Yeah.
Friday to you. Yeah.
So what are you looking
So-
forward to doing?
No, I don't have anything to look forward to right now. That's really exciting. I think.
Yeah, what's in it?
No, I mean, it's boring because we're talking about the same stuff about some tedious work that we're doing on the documentary. But again, by the time you hear this, maybe we'll be finished. Maybe we'll have distribution that we can announce. But as right now, we're working with a legal team to clear everything so we don't get sued for
Yes.
in exposés. A little background on exposés we didn't know is that if you don't clear every little minutia of your project, you leave yourself very vulnerable to lawsuits and for slander, liability, all those yummy things. So you have to hire a very expensive team of lawyers that forensically go through the project with you and make you do lots of changes and things so that you're protected, and then you get insurance, and it all costs a lot of money. Is what it does.
Mm-hmm.
It costs
So every
loads
question,
of money.
sometimes we have a question for them. We go, oh no. If we type this email and ask them this question, that's going to be $400. So let's not ask
Yeah.
that question right now.
Honestly,
Yeah.
it's really scary. We've raised all this money ourselves, and we think, oh, we have plenty for our mixes and the pretty stuff, all the polishing that we need, and then it's like you get a bill for a half a week and it's $2,500. What? How did that happen? Where did that happen? We talked for 2 minutes. Yeah, it's super
Yeah.
expensive.
But they're great.
They are very
thank
good.
God
They're
for them, because in the long run, down the line, this is cheap insurance, if you will, because
Yeah.
everyone's litigious. So
Yeah.
and even though we're not,
I just have to have
there's
enough for
nothing
my
we're saying that's wrong,
bodyguard.
so.
I just have to
Yes.
get enough for my bodyguard.
Susie's going to need a bodyguard, because the lobby's coming after her after they see this, even because they don't want it. They don't want everyone to know what's going on. So
Yeah.
look out.
But look out! I'm the new Erin Brago is on the prowl. Here I am. Okay.
Here she comes.
No, I don't care. This is my purpose. What are we gonna do?
Yeah. Just go for it. That's what I say.
Yeah. Being bold, big and bold. So yeah. So if if you have any need for a tax deduction, we're still in the market for a little bit more support for our project after we got our last bill from the lawyer. So please, head on over to the National Consumer Voice, and we're on their front page, and you will find a way to make a donation if you're so inclined, and we would be very so grateful for your help.
And it is 100% tax deductible because they are our fiscal sponsor, and so
Right.
it's a win-win.
It is a win-win. All right. And know what else is a win-win? It's actually a win-win-win.
I
Because
know.
we have
got a
3
lot of
guests
wins
today. We have
We
3
do.
guests. That's a win-win-win.
We are loaded with guests, and they're fantastic, and I'll tell you more
Mm-hmm.
about them right now.
Do it.
Marianne Sciucco is not a nurse who writes, but a writer who happens to be a nurse who has cared for hundreds of dementia patients over a 20-year career. Her novel, Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's love story, is a testament to the power of love in the face of this heart-wrenching disease. Ironically, 2 years after her novel's publication, she started living her own story when her stepfather was diagnosed with mixed dementia. She's become a prolific writer and also launched her own podcast, Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia, an AlzAuthors Podcast. And she is the co-founder of the nonprofit AlzAuthors.com, a global community of over 300 writers who are writing all about dementia from their own personal experience. Anne Campanella is the manager and director of AlzAuthors and is a former magazine and newspaper editor. She's the author of 2 award-winning memoirs and 4 collections of poetry. Her writing has appeared in newspapers, magazines, literary journals, and online sites all around the world. Her first memoir, Motherhood, Lost and Found, tells the story of her mother's descent into Alzheimer's at the same time Anne was trying to become a mother and dealing with a series of miscarriages. This memoir was named one of the best Alzheimer's books of all time by Book Authority 2 years in a row. Sue Fagalde Lick is a prolific writer of books, poems, essays, and articles. She's been nominated for the Pushcart Prize in both fiction and nonfiction and won first prize in Willamette Writers K. Snow Awards for poetry. A former president of the Silicon Valley branch of California Writers Club and Writers on the Edge, Sue is co-founder of the Central Coast chapter of Willamette Writers and former president of the Oregon Poetry Association. She has taught workshops in article writing, creative writing, and publishing across the country. And coming June 25th, 2024, Sue is releasing her latest work, No Way Out of This, a memoir about Sue's Alzheimer's journey with her husband. Today, they're all here to talk about Poetry for the Dementia Journey, a beautiful anthology that sprung from an online event featuring over 30 poets during National Poetry Month. And to find out more about this wonderful creation, let's say hello to Marianne Sciucco, Anne Campanella, and Sue Fagalde Lick. Hello, hello.
Wow. Hi, ladies. Thank you for coming here. I'm so impressed with all of your biographies are so impressive, and I don't even know where to begin. We're talking about your poetry, but there's so much to talk about with everything else you've done. So it's extraordinary. I'll just jump in if you don't mind, and just say since Marianne, I feel is the troop leader here because I know her the best. I'll say, Marianne, how did you meet Anne and Sue, and how does this collaboration of poetry come together with the three of you?
Well, this was a long time in the making. I started AlzAuthors back in 2015 with 2 other current members of our team, and Anne joined us about a year or so after we got started. She discovered us somehow. You can probably tell that better than I, Anne, but she discovered us and wanted her book to be a part of AlzAuthors' mission. And, yes, definitely, Anne joined us in that way, but she also wanted to do a little bit more and volunteered the use of her editorial and writing skills to help out, And then next thing you know, she's on the board. And so she's been a board member for many, many years now and is kind of a guiding force in many of our projects. She works on the custom caregiver collections. And right now we're getting a brand new website. So she's been like behind the scenes helping to finesse that. And then Sue came into the organization maybe a couple of years ago with her book of poetry, Gravel Road Ahead. That's usually how an author joins us is... they discover that we spotlight these books and promote them for free, pretty much. We now charge a small submission fee, but in the past we didn't. So people would join us and kind of not really, I don't think, understanding the depths that they could become involved. And it's not just a place to park your book, but it's a community of other authors and other caregivers. So Sue joined us and came to some of our events and was, flitting around the edges. And ironically, she wrote to me a few months back telling me that she had just completed her term as president of the poetry club that she was in, and she had some free time, and did we have any projects? And I said, yeah, I'm putting together a poetry book. And I knew that she had published several, so I was like, would you like to help us publish our poetry anthologies? She said, oh yeah. She jumped right on it, and she worked really hard putting it all together for us. So we appreciate that so much because, we all work for free here at AlzAuthors. We're a nonprofit, and nobody gets a paycheck. but we all have really strong desires and passions to tell caregiver stories and to help people that are currently on a journey.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so incredible what you do because you created this community of writers and literature that, is directly in support of caregivers and in particular dementia, but caregivers in general, really. And it's extraordinary because, like all of us, we all like our podcast, it's all done as a labor of love. Right. And it comes out of our own experiences, and it's what we bring to the table as our experiences, and that's what is powerful. And it's powerful in all your books, and you've really branded yourself as the destination for these kinds of stories. Mm-hmm. I hear it from people all the time, like, "Oh, you know the people from AlzAuthors. Can you get me an introduction?"
Yeah.
So you really have created a really beautiful brand for yourself,
Thank you.
And I think it's fantastic. And Anne, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself as well? So just where how you ramped up to this position with AlzAuthors.
I would love to. I really found AlzAuthors to be a place that was exactly where I wanted to be, because after my mother had Alzheimer's for 14 years, and it was when I was in my 30s, early 30s it began, and I was so isolated. And I was a writer, and I was isolated and caring for my mother, and the one thing I wanted to do was to reach out to others and find ways to just make more of a community for people who were experiencing this kind of loss and just going through the craziness of what I experienced. And so AlzAuthors just welcomed me. Marianne and Jean and Vicki, who were a part of it at the time, and Catherine at the time, they were just so happy to have somebody else to help, and I just wanted to push the word that there were resources out there for people who needed them. And of course I also wanted people to read my book because I felt like it could help others who were isolated themselves and were in a similar caregiving situation. So it's just been a wonderful community, and we've just become such close friends through this process, which is really another blessing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And Sue, where did Sue go?
There she is.
Troublemaker is back. Okay, no, I'm teasing her. So we had technical issues before. I'm teasing her lovingly. That's what I call my mom, Troublemaker, all the time when she was in her. My mom had Alzheimer's for 16 years, Anne. So it's a long road. I get it. I get it. Very long, very long. So, Sue, it's great to meet you and have you here. And your background in journalism and in newspapers, and that's an interesting pivot into poetry. From I mean, what kind of journalism do you do? How do you come to this? Obviously, you have some experience with dementia or Alzheimer's, and so what's your trajectory here?
Well, I was a poet long before I went to work for newspapers, but a girl has to make a living, right? So,
yes.
So
art seldom pays.
Really, no kidding. I worked for newspapers for quite a while, and but I'm got an MFA in creative writing at age 51, and I'm back into poetry and fiction and creative nonfiction. My husband had Alzheimer's. He was a bit older than me, but he started in 2002. We started seeing symptoms, and I recognized it because my grandfather had dementia, and I'd done a lot of research and a lot of writing about it back when he was sick, and it was a whole heartbreaking thing. And then, sure enough, my husband came down with it, and spent 7 years at home caring for him before he wound up 2 years in a series of different institutions. So I was writing a lot of poetry at that time. I was also journaling a lot, and the poetry book got published first, but now the memoir is coming out next month. And I don't know, we'll be sharing that whole story.
Exciting. That's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's very, very inspiring that you got your degree at 51. And, as you know, the documentary that we're doing, No Country for Old People, is so much of the issues come from our inherent ageism, right? And so, that people are just supposed to start winding down, even if they're healthy and feeling good and, motivated. But, I love hearing those stories of new chapters. That's what it's about. It's the curiosity of life, right?
Right. I'm still winding up, but,
Me too.
as I was getting my my master's, my husband was getting more and more sick, having more and more troubles with his dementia. And so, I remember graduation ceremony, I looked at myself in the mirror and said, what am I going to do with this? Because I can see what's happening, and he's going down a whole other track. And am I actually going to be able to use my degree? So, but,
Wonderful. The irony of that, of you enhancing your capacity of intellect, and as he's losing part of it, correct? Right? So
Right.
there's the
Right.
irony of that. So, well, I love this. So how, I have a question for all of you. So I think about, because when I was making my movie, My Mom and the Girl, about my mom, and it was with Valerie Harper, who plays my mom in it, and I remember being encouraged by people who, when I would tell this story, this lovely anecdote about these three disparate women, and I thought, this is so beautiful. I mean, people would say, you should do a film, and I thought, oh, just what the world needs is another film about Alzheimer's, right? And I really thought that. That was really my thought, was like, who's going to want to watch this? And no. And then I got to thinking more about it, and I thought, it's funny. My mom's funny. She's a pistol. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll be a different perspective. And then as I started to really figure out how I was in that relationship, I thought maybe there is something to share, right? So, and indeed, it turned out to be very, very successful in that it resonated with so many people, and more than I ever thought, and still does, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you say to other people, like authors and people or potential authors, who say, well, just the world needs is another book about Alzheimer's? How do you look at that, and say, because I'm curious, there's a lot of books about Alzheimer's, but they're all different, because I've read a lot of all of yours, and I love them, and they all touch me in a different way, right? So, but I want to hear all three of your perspectives. Sue.
When I was trying to market my memoir, which had a different title at that time, I called it Alzheimer. Agents and editors all said, "Yeah, nobody wants to do another disease memoir. No, especially dementia. It's been done. But if you want to do a how-to, we're all for that." But they basically said the market is closed, which every story is different, and there's different angles to be taken. So I kept going.
Good for you. That's interesting that they said there's a how-to is all. I feel the opposite. I say this a lot. I've been noticing this a lot. There's so many caregiver advocates who are regurgitating the same how-to.
Yes.
Right? And I think that, how many influencers do we need who are saying the same things over and over again, which is, listen, it's great. I didn't have that when my mom started. I didn't even know. I made every mistake in the book, so I didn't know what to do. And there wasn't any podcasts for sure. And, and I read Greg, what was his name?
O'Brien.
The one that did From Mars. O'Brien,
On Pluto.
Yeah. He was our guest, and I read that book, and that was like the one book that I knew to read at the time. And it was difficult because it was coming from his head, right? And it was it was scary for me because I knew what was coming for my mom. It was daunting. But, I find it interesting that, because like you just said, Sue, all stories are different, but the how-to is the same, pretty much.
Yes.
Right?
And I have to say, when I was caring for my mom, I was looking for books to read because that is how I've gotten through life. I look for memoirs to teach me how to not just survive, but to thrive in different situations.
Right.
And so at that time, which was quite a few years ago, it was over 20 years ago, there just were very few memoirs. And I really wanted to know, how does somebody navigate all these small little things that come, the changes, she can't drive, or she's putting on her clothes backwards, or, just saying weird things. How do you navigate that? And I felt like I could learn and teach that in my own memoir. It was like, I can just show the experience. It's like you can teach by showing rather than telling. And so I feel like memoirs are such a great way to learn.
Agree. It's like the same with a narrative film.
Yes.
Right? Because
Yes.
I decided to do it authentically, but also not depressingly, to do it. I mean, Marianne's seen the film, so I think you agree, Marianne, that it's real. And I
Yes.
show some not so pleasant things, but I wasn't being gratuitous, but I wanted to be real, but then I wanted to show the love and then the humor.
Yes.
And the irony of it all, and that when you lean in, then you figure out how to work at each stage, and it's much more peaceful and rewarding, and for both sides, for caregiver and caregivee, as they were. So, what do you think, Marianne?
Well, when I wrote my book, it was in the early 2000s, and I couldn't get anybody to pay attention to it. I sent it out to agents and editors, far and wide. I have a big stack of rejection letters from people who never read the book, didn't even ask for one page. And it was so discouraging. But I knew that it was really important. There weren't a lot of books about Alzheimer's dementia, especially memoir or fiction, at that time in the early 2000s. And I did a lot of research, and I read what was available. So I couldn't understand why it was so taboo, and so that's when I decided that I would self-publish it, which I did. And I'm really glad that I did. And now there's more and more books, because at AlzAuthors we get people submitting, to us every week, sometimes more than one person with a new book or something. And, we recently are going through a change in our platform and how we're going to be doing things in the future, because we just have a very small team and nobody gets paid, and it just became more than we could handle. So one of the things that we decided to put the brakes on are those caregiver guides, and we're looking for more memoir-based stories in fiction, and we're really looking for stories about how someone went through a situation and how they survived it and thrived through it. And those are kind of sometimes hard to find. And there's always the different situations, like a woman taking care of her mom, another woman taking care of her husband, a man taking care of his dad, somebody taking care of their grandparents, and then everybody brings a different type of socioeconomic flavor to their situation. So that's why it's always so different. And where people live, that's another one. We look for authors who are outside of the United States. We have an author representing every continent except for Antarctica in our collection.
Wow.
Yeah, we have from everywhere
That's
around
so
the
great.
globe. Yeah, at least one or two from Australia, Europe, Asia. We have from Africa. So yeah, and those are hard to find, and we can only work with the books that people have written. So that's another thing. And sometimes people say, well, why don't you have a book from this or this type of situation? Well, we haven't found that yet. So somebody has to write it.
Yeah, it's interesting because the culture, when I was working closely with Alzheimer's Los Angeles here, when I was doing our film, and I trained as a volunteer just to really get my head around I wanted to be very, very involved in the community. And, I really learned, you don't think about it at first, is that the cultural differences in families and how you approach things, and how you approach this particular illness, which carries still the stigma and embarrassment. And I had so much shame from my mom in the beginning because I didn't know how people would perceive her, and I didn't know how to protect her. And I thought that, at least I could protect her from feeling embarrassed by that kind of thing. And then I learned that people are actually more gracious than I gave them credit for, and people were very supportive when she was living with me and loved her and learned to navigate the disease and understood it, and wanted to understand it. So I found that there was more of those kinds of people than the others,
How do you walk that line of when you're writing a memoir, your own personal experience about the person you love, of being honest and forthright, and then also protecting their dignity and certain personal things? Like, how do you draw that line? Is it just something by feel, or what's that journey?
That is a great question, Don. I'll answer just from my perspective. I was very lucky because my mother was a journalist also, and I knew that she was very passionate about bringing to light things that our communities needed to know about. And so even as she was descending into Alzheimer's, I knew that while she would be embarrassed in the moment if she knew that this was going on, I knew she would be supportive in the long run. It's like where she is now, I know she's looking down going, you go girl, this is exactly what our world needs. So I'm very fortunate. But it's a tough line because, I wanted to be very real. And also, like Susie, you said, I wanted to show, the joys and the griefs and the strangeness and the oddities. But I felt like being true to the actual experience was the best way to honor her.
Yes. Yeah. Have you found books that are submitted that cross that line and that you have?
Yeah, there have been.
Yeah.
And I don't think recently, but early on there were many books. I mean, we only accept maybe 60% of the books that come our way for various reasons, but there were books that had come out that were not helpful at all, that were, not presenting the person in a good light.
Just sensationalizing it, but not with no value
so
to
they
it.
were like a hard no, because we don't want to put on like rose-colored glasses and be like Pollyanna-ish about what this journey is like, because for some people it's truly brutal. But we also don't want to, we don't want to take advantage of somebody else's situation to try. It's not like clickbait or something like that. We definitely want to stay away from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sue, did you find the same path or journey?
Yeah, well, I got to say, it goes two different ways. I think with the poetry, I was able to respect the line between personal and private. You can cloak so many things in a poem that you can't so much in a memoir. But I think I trampled all over it in the memoir and wrote things that I'm sure my husband would have been totally embarrassed about, because toward the end, the things that killed him were very private, very personal. But they were important too and dealt with important issues, so I did write about them. It's the ugly and the beautiful all together.
Yeah, it's a disservice.
Anything you regret? Yeah, anything you regret or would say, I really wish that wasn't there?
No, there's things I regret about his care, but not about the book.
Mm. It's a disservice
I had the same,
not to share, the yin and yang, the balance of it, the joys, and then there's also the heartbreak, and you can't, it's not fair to the readers or to the caregivers, because some people would think that there would be something wrong with them, like, oh, well, why am I not, thrilled to have this happen to me, and how come I can't handle it, and what's wrong with me? Am I a failure? And people already feel like that anyway, so they have to really see the ugly things that go on, and how people can sometimes be ugly too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was very honest.
Go on.
I was very honest in mind that, I was in therapy and had some mental health difficulties during the journey. Definitely was struggling with that too, because you can't just be calm and generous all the time. Sometimes it really makes you nuts, and that needs to be shown.
The exhaustion.
I think, Sue, that being, and I say this a lot, that being a caregiver to a spouse or a partner, it's got, has its own set of issues that a mother-daughter doesn't have, or a mother, or, a parent-child doesn't have. You have that added, level of relationship that, is, I don't know, because I haven't been in it, but I know that just watching objectively, say, like with my stepdad and my mom, my stepfather being very much in denial about my mother's, decline, and getting frustrated with her, and as opposed to feeling compassion, and I would say to him, Georgie, Mom has Alzheimer's. No, stop, she's fine. She's fine.
Yeah.
And so I've heard that from a lot of our guests, and so I know that there's it's I think it adds a whole nother set of emotional baggage, and it's a heavier lift. I think, I'm not trying to compare, it's apples and oranges, but I do think there's a bit more complication that as a spouse, and everything, your intimacy, everything, and we've had some beautiful interviews with the most gracious partners where, their husband was like, who, I can't remember her name now, Dawn, the opera singer, whose husband had dementia, and he was calling, like 9, what is it, 8, the phone sex thing, like, what is it called, the phone number, I forgot what it's like, whatever. Dawn, the 601 numbers.
Dawn, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Those numbers.
Yeah, I know all about. That's my expertise.
Well, anyway, she was so gracious because she knew that he loved her. He just it wasn't the same person. So she helped him with the calls. And I just, I'm bastardizing the story, but she told it so well. And it was so touching because she loved him, and she knew that it was just, he was a different man. She said he had regressed to a different man, and she just wanted him to be happy. And I thought, wow, what an amazing love story, and similar stories like that from, couples. And I find that very intriguing, very, very much so. So I understand that you having to go to therapy and having to deal with that. It's a lot, because, it's just a lot. So,
Memoirs to poetry, there's a difference, isn't there? I assume there's a big difference. Is there a preference? What are the differences, and how do you, what's, and how do you start to write poetry about it? Poetry can be all things. It's not always flowers and happy, obviously. But do you have a preference, and what are the differences?
Have you heard of Sylvia Plath?
She didn't make it.
I know. Not a happy girl.
Open to anyone. No. And that's open for all three. So whoever wants to dive in.
Let me start with that. I guess which one I do depends on my mood. Sometimes I just barf out what happened in streams of prose, and later we'll see what we're going to make of it. But poetry, you can take just a nugget of a scene, something you see, something you hear that's like, oh, and you build on it. the tree outside my husband's window at the nursing home, and as it changed through the seasons, and he thought we could go out there and play, but just little moments that you go, oh, I could do something with that and build a poem around it. Where with a memoir, you've got to build a whole story. It's a moment. You're capturing a moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll add to that, Sue, because like Sue, I was a poet before I was a memoirist. In fact, I wrote poetry even as early as first grade. So I was processing the world through poetry. It was a way for me to take in mostly difficult moments. Most of my poetry, people would say, oh, you're the grief poet. But they're not necessarily all sad. There's a mix of emotions in the poems, but it was a way, and it has been a way for me to really process the deepest, most painful experiences, which happens with Alzheimer's or dementia when you're seeing somebody change, or you just don't expect the transformations that are happening, and it's a way to process. And as Sue said, you take these moments, and I found my poetry books actually were kind of like these little islands of serenity in the midst of this raging storm. And so those little islands were just a wonderful way to remember both something good and something hard. So
it's a beautiful way to frame it. That's beautiful. I like that. Yeah, very pretty. You said you were going to do some readings. I would love to have some readings. If you would be, are you ready to do that?
Yeah.
Marianne, are you? Yeah?
Yeah, I'm just going to read some. I don't have any poetry in this book because I didn't write poetry, but I did want to read some by some of the other authors.
Okay. And then Anne and Sue, you'll read as well, right?
Sure.
I'm excited. This is going to be great.
Did you want me to go first? Or?
So, yes, please.
Okay. I'm going to read this poem.
Tell us who are you reading? Yeah.
Yes. This poem is written by Mary Crescenzo, one of our authors, who originally wrote a play called Planet A, and then that became a book. She's done extensive work in the Alzheimer's community. And she wrote her poems. The two of the poems in the book were written about people that she met with Alzheimer's dementia in her work. So it wasn't a parent or anything. This one is called Dorothy. My first date brought me a gardenia. We went to a party together. I spent my days as a child in Virginia among blossoms and the procession of farm hands, cotillion balls and grand marches. And those required hats and gloves, spotless like the color of cotton in the field. Today, my daughter carries out cardboard boxes filled with my clothes, my baubles, the color of Mardi Gras, and the final bill. If she could have managed, she would have kept me with her in her home, but it was impossible for both of us. Sometimes it simply is, no matter how much someone loves you. It's better this way for both of us. No more bills, no more useless guilt, no more suffering on both sides. This day was as inevitable as the tinge of a white flower when it is around for too long.
Yeah,
it's
touching.
So
Beautiful.
powerful. But these are the types of poetry poems that you will find in this book of people writing about the different hardships and heartbreaking experiences, as well as some of the happier times, and some of them you'll laugh.
Yeah. Anne, did you have one that you could share?
Sure, yes. This one is from my collection called What Flies Away, which tells the story of my mother's descent into Alzheimer's. At the same time, I was trying to become pregnant and eventually did have kind of a miracle birth of a child at the age of 40. This is called Child Mother. She used to grip the rudder, auburn hair slicked, cheeks round and pink as two rubber balls. "Duck," she'd yell, and the sail swooped across us, canvas wagging for a moment like the skin on her jaw. Now she stares at the photo of the bay, her eyes pools of hazel. She grips my hand, whispers, "I think I'll walk down to the lake," her voice soft as an eddy of wind against my neck. We pushed through the glass doors into a gray sea of cement. Cars and vans bob like anchored boats. Her eyes, calm as mist, she points. "What do you see?" I ask, squinting at a lamppost, a small tree in the distance. She waves. "Why, it's Dad, of course, but he doesn't see me." Wetness slides down the ripple of her cheek. "Will you take me to him?" I place my arm across the mast of her shoulders, walk with her into the mirage.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Yeah, you did.
Oh,
Yeah, you did.
thanks.
Yeah.
She was a lake lover and loved sailing, and it just, makes me
Yeah.
emotional to think about it.
Yeah. It's funny, like both of these that you just read, Marianne and Anne, it is very emotive, right? I think that in a poetry frame, in poetry, it's quite, it's very impactful in terms of in such a short, in haiku, as it were, right? It's like very, very quick, and yet it gets right to the heart. Mm-hmm. Especially and both of those experiences are completely different, right? And the mirage is beautiful, and then the flower, the tinge of the flower, and the inevitability of all that, which anybody who's been a caregiver knows that moment where you're packing up the life of your loved one, right? And you're packing it up.
Yeah.
And you're downsizing it, and it's brutal. It's so brutal. Yeah. It's really hard. Yeah. Powerful.
Yeah, and I guess our hope is that these poems will touch the people who are living the situation now or have experienced it, and they can just flip through and find a poem that relates to their experience and just have a little bit of a release of emotion or a little joy or cry a little bit or whatever it is that they need, but hopefully they won't feel so alone.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it also humanizes the caregiving experience because, you think, you don't, when you see somebody caring for somebody else, these are not the thoughts and moments. You just think of what the physical thing is happening right at that moment, where all this other stuff is swimming up here. So it's
it's
beautiful.
there.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Sue?
Yeah, I'm going to share one that's also in my book, Gravel Road Ahead, but it's in the new book too. Sister Alzheimer's Wife. And I'm addressing other women who are going through what I've gone through. Sister Alzheimer's Wife, I know you, even though we have never met. I know the fear every time he forgets something he used to know, like how to make a sandwich or where the salad dressing goes. I know you lie awake at night watching him hallucinate, fighting monsters in the bed or not remembering who you are. He gets lost and pees on the rug. You're so tired you want to run away. I know you weep where he cannot hear, in the car, the garage, on the toilet seat, then hurry to answer his calls for help. Turn on the TV or button his shirt. Well, the house needs work. Lawns aren't mowed and the oil light's been on in the car for weeks. I know you watch the money go as you pay bills you never paid before. Doctors, car repair, and soon the nursing home. Married but not a wife anymore. You miss kissing and sex and wine-soaked talks, sharing memories only you remember now. Oh, sister, I know you feel alone, that no one understands the way it is, that he's disappearing bit by bit, even if he looks the same as he always did. And it's not fair, not effing fair. But you promised, so you stay. Oh, Sister Alzheimer's Wife, I know. I rode that ride from beginning to end, plastered in place by centrifugal force, till it stopped, and I wobbled off alone, dizzy and sick to my stomach, yes. But I staggered on, and so will you.
Oh, God. That's
Wow.
good. That's good.
Very powerful.
That's really good.
Amazing.
Thanks.
I mean, 3 completely different angles in the same world that are, and they're literally like they're
Like little
it's like
movies.
looking at a painting. They're
Yeah.
to me they're like paintings to me.
Yeah.
As opposed
Yeah.
to movies, it's
Yeah.
it literally is that it just evokes that in your mind, even if you don't know who. I mean, when you said sharing memories that only you still remember. I mean,
exactly.
That's, wow.
Yeah. But, it's
But
true.
isn't it? And you answered every question that I was talking about before, about, right? You just said that. You said it in that poem about missing the sex and the wine-soaked conversations and all that stuff, and that there you were. And of course, what do I relate to? I relate to the wobbling away at the end, and it's just that feeling of like, what have I just been through? And how am I still standing? Like, all of this makes me very emotional because it resonates so much. It touches deep. It hits really deeply. Yeah.
And I really believe that if you allow yourself to go deep into those difficult emotions, it will allow you to feel more joy also. Because the times
100%.
when the times when I was numb and I couldn't feel anything, but when I let myself really feel the pain, then the next moment I would be amazed by the, special moment that just happened.
Right. Yeah. It's the fear
Because you
of
protect
it.
yourselves. Yeah, often
Yeah.
You're just protecting yourself. You're like, I'm just going to shut it off. And then, like you say, you can't feel anything, and that's not a good place to be. It's not healthy.
Right.
It's not. I again, back to Sue's poem, I one of the things when you were talking, Anne, about those like those moments that if you just, those really hard moments, like I always remember going to see my mom and being the cheerleader, going in and doing the dog and pony show for her, right?
Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah.
Mommy, your favorite
Right.
daughter's here, dun,
Yeah.
dun, 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 right?
Yeah.
And then I'd hug her, and then I would cry over her shoulder, but she didn't know it. And then I'd wait till it went
Yes.
away, and then I pushed
Yes.
back because I didn't want her to see me cry, because I know that would hurt her. It would hurt her because she wouldn't want to see me cry.
Yeah.
So I didn't let her see me cry. Even when she was dying, I didn't cry in front of her because I didn't want her to feel scared or sad for me,
Right.
because I know that inside her there was Mom,
Yeah.
and that would hurt. So I was
Yeah.
very careful with that. But when you said that you would go in your car and cry, boy, did I do that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you,
Yeah.
when you're together, you're sorting through the things. So I can't talk about that. I can't talk about
Right.
that. That will upset him, or he won't understand. So you're like, okay, what in my little file crayon, but in my brain can I actually
Right.
bring out and talk about? Mostly it was
Right.
the dogs,
Right.
Wow.
Good thing I have my tissue box close by, folks. Yeah.
So what makes a poem, and I don't want to get into a whole class here, but a lot of people think, oh, well, it rhymes, this line rhymes with that line, and there's a pattern, and then but there's not, all of these were completely different.
Yeah.
Why is it a poem as opposed to just a little short story? What is there a delineation between the two for us people who have no clue?
I mean, we're uncultured writers that we are.
Yeah, right here.
I second that emotion.
Well, they don't have to rhyme these days, for sure. Part of it is imagery, using metaphors and similes and picking up something, a color, a sound, something that will resonate with the readers. Some of it is rhythm. Mostly they don't rhyme these days. They can, but you don't want it to be sing-song. You want it to flow. So it's the use of language. It's more intense language.
There's so many different types of poems. I mean,
Yes.
there are prose poems that are like a paragraph, but they're very condensely written. And again, as you said, Sue, they either focus on an image or a way of language or the rhythm, and again, there's just, you can approach a poem from a million different directions. But yeah, what's different? I mean, I would say usually it's a contained moment or a time that you're sort of, trying
A snapshot. It's like a snapshot,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're not trying to tell the entire story, although
Right.
the whole story might come out in that little
Exactly.
snapshot.
Like
yeah,
Sue's,
it's
yours
very-
was a longer period of time as opposed to this moment, yet it was a snapshot.
Mine
still
was a
the same,
snapshot too.
you know?
People would say, "Why
Yeah.
this needs to be a real movie? We want to know what happens." And I say, "But we don't know what happens. This is it. This is the snapshot.
This is
This is
what
all
happened.
I wanted. This is what happened. This is what I want to tell. This is as powerful. This is powerful as it is. So that's what all I wanted to do. I love that you're bringing poetry into the zeitgeist again, because I know when I was growing up, like, poetry was very popular, and people, all my peers, we got poetry books and we read poetry and we, but I don't find a lot of people talking about poetry, at least, within the 3 generations that I know, which are my daughters, or each are into one Gen Z, millennial, and then Gen X, right? So we have the 3 of us, and then you don't hear a lot about poetry. So I think it's really interesting and lovely that you are bringing it back, and that it is a powerful art. And and I like that. Like, how is the appetite that you find out there? Like, Marianne, what do you is there an appetite for poetry, or do you? I'm just wondering, because I think it is such a powerful.
I mean, from my limited experience, yes, because the response to our doing the poetry reading last year, which is where this book was born, I had, it's kind of a funny story. I'll be honest about it. So what happened was, we wanted to do this virtual poetry reading for National Poetry Month. And we were going to invite the authors in our collaborative who were poets that we knew of, that had published books of poetry that were in our collection. So there were 13 of them, so I made up a mailing list for those 13 people, and I wrote up this invitation, and I sent the invitation out. And the next thing I know, the very first response I get, it was from the author I just read, Mary Crescenzo. "Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you for inviting me to be in the poetry reading." And I'm thinking to myself, Mary Crescenzo, why is she in the poetry reading? She didn't write a book of poetry. And so I looked at my email. I had sent it out to everybody on our list.
Oh my God!
It wasn't 13 people now. So I was like, holy, now what am I going to do? How many people are going to spring forward? So there were like 30, 40 people that wanted to come to the poetry reading and read.
There were more than that.
It was crazy. Yeah.
There were over 100 who signed up,
Wow.
and maybe 60 showed up. It was crazy.
We had a lot.
And
It
I
went
think
on for 2 hours. Yeah,
Yes,
we did
over
2
2
hours.
Wow.
Yes.
Because we let people read. And then when I had to make it into a podcast, so it's in 2 episodes because it was too long. Like, my system couldn't manage it, so I had to break it in half. We have it on YouTube. It's in its entirety, so people could watch it on YouTube. But and so now we put out the call for the poets to submit the poems to the books, and we have well over 100 poems in this book. And
Wow.
we allowed them to submit up to 3 poems, and we took them all. And they come from a very very wide variety of experiences, where some of the poets are very prominent, well-known, award-winning, have done many books and written many, many poems. And then there were other ones who, it was just somebody that took care of their mother and they wrote 1 poem. And they won't write another poem, but that was what they did. So it just runs the gamut of all of that, which I think is really, really cool.
It seems like it would lend itself to what's going on today. Everything about short and fast and quick and condensed.
That's true.
And it seems, even for social media, it seems like it's a natural for this to come back and say, yeah, this is something that is that could become really something that you could put it out there in so many different ways. Not just in a book or not just as one long video, but just in bites.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And a lot of
Sue?
poets are publishing poetry on social media.
Yeah,
We see
there's
that.
among the younger folks, slam poetry has become very popular.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of a performance poetry it's almost like rap, and
Yeah.
that is
Spoken
quite
word.
popular with the young. But
Spoken
yeah,
word.
So performing
Yeah.
it, not just putting it on a book, but
Right.
performing it is becoming very popular. So
Yeah.
that's another aspect of it. That's
Well, spoken
Yeah.
word is definitely has not lost. It's been around, and I remember because we were developing a series on spoken word, like in the early 2000s. And it's quite. I mean, it's an art. It is an art. There are some, like a good spoken word artist as opposed to not a good spoken word. I mean, they are They're powerful. I mean, can move you. They can move the hell out of you. They are incredible artists. In fact, we have a woman who's doing or giving us the rights to do this song use her song in our movie for No Country for Old People for the credits, which is basically spoken word on a blues track. I mean, she's incredible. She's a one-of-a-kind artist, and we're just thrilled with it because it is powerful when you've got that kind of communication. It says a lot, and there's metaphor all over the place.
But also hearing it from the writer themselves, because even if you're not a performer, it's just inherently there. The emotion that, something that you can't tell somebody else how to do that. It's just there. It's visceral, and it's coming from, not only from your hands, but from your heart. But you can hear it. I mean, when you were reading it, you could feel it. You could, so yeah, it just feels like it lends itself to what's going on today.
Yeah, we love it. So when are we? So it's coming. Let's see. When are we doing it? Tell us when your poetry readings are going to happen. I know it's happening in June.
Yes, June
Yeah.
3rd. So it's coming up next week. And the
Okay.
book comes out June 1st. And it'll be
Wow.
in paperback and digital on Amazon and eventually on the other, book publishing platforms. But can I read another poem? I had
Fantastic.
one poem I really
Yes, I was
wanted
going to
read
ask you all to
because-
read one more,
Oh,
if you
great.
would.
I wanted to read a
But I just want to say before, I want to just say, you're going to hear this podcast. It's going to already have been published. You're
Right.
going to go to Amazon. You're going to be able to get everything that you want. Are you doing an audio version by any chance?
No.
That's a great
do.
idea, though.
Oh, please
That's
do.
a great idea.
I don't know who's going to read it.
It's a great idea if
but-
I say so myself. Well,
Please
we know
do.
actors, okay? We're just
Okay.
saying. We
Yeah.
Well, someone else can take
Yeah.
the lead on that project.
And Sue, your book's also coming out next month, isn't it? Or June 25th? Is that
June
correct?
25th. No way out of this. Yeah.
Sue's book is
No way
wonderful
out of
too. It's
No
a
way
great,
out of this.
it's a great book.
Awesome.
Fabulous.
And
Yeah.
Anne, what else do you want to? Is there anything we can promote for you? And then we're going to have you guys, because I know I'm going to be crying already again. So I want to get all the work out now.
I have another book coming out, but it's not about Alzheimer's. It's about a shoulder injury that I had, so that'll be coming out hopefully in the fall.
Wow.
Okay. Good.
Excellent.
Okay. Taking a pivot, which is
Right.
good. Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. So, Marianne, you've got one ready to go just to read.
I do.
for us?
I have to
Okay.
read this because this poem is by a man named Peter Berry. He lives in the United Kingdom. He has early onset dementia. He's had it for about 6 or 7 years now. He's about 60 years old. And his voice is, we have a handful of people in our organization who are actually living with dementia themselves and have written or have had their stories written for them. And I believe that they have the most important voices because they are able to articulate and tell us what is really going on in their heads and in their hearts. And the rest of us just can wonder. So I wanted to share Peter's poem. It's called Sheltering from the Storm. Dementia is stripping me of myself, but I have become more than I ever was. We build our own shelters from the storm that is dementia because others do not realize how strong it has to be. but it will soon be lost to the tide of dementia, swept away by the dark sea. I walk a narrow, rocky, dark dementia path that demands 110% of me not to stumble, because if I fall, I fear I shall not stand again. My life with dementia has become a book with one page, but that page is constantly formed and rewritten. The erased memory is followed by the created and embraced now.
Wow.
And he
I love
tells
that.
us, life with dementia is different. That's all he says.
Yeah.
That's
but,
right.
But in a
He
way that
has-
just, that, yeah.
He has had a memoir written for him by a good friend of his, and he says, I have never read the book because I can't remember one page to the next. So,
Right.
yeah. So,
I love that because it really frames the idea of which I said about my mom is my mom taught me how to be the most Zen you can be, is that living in the moment. Like it really is the poster child for living in the moment and really appreciating what's happening at right now, because there's no yesterday and there's no tomorrow for my mom, for anybody with dementia. So it's now, and that's all that's important. And when I look at my grandchildren, I have little babies who are 2, not even 2, a year and a half and 4, and I watch them again, like I watched my daughters, and you realize that they only live for now too. They're in the moment, and it's beautiful, and it's lessons that we learn. We learn it from our children, or we learn it from other people. We just have to be open to it, to learn, right?
right.
So that's a beautiful poem. Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.
And Susie, what you were saying just reminded me of a time, and I have a poem about it, but I don't have it ready to read. When my daughter was 6 months old and my mother was slowly dying of Alzheimer's, and they were so at a similar stage in life. I was trimming their fingernails, I was feeding both of them. They were both looking to me for comfort, for everything, and yet one was growing up and one was, getting ready to say goodbye.
I call it Benjamin Button. It's how I look at the two. I always say that it was because my granddaughter only knew my mom through Zoom because she was born during COVID.
Oh, wow.
And when she finally got to see my mom in person, she was just 2. She didn't have her speech all together at all. But when she saw my mom, they were bonded. She climbed right into bed with her. You've seen the video. She'd come in, nanny, 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 and like patting her and and looking at her face, kissing at her, and my mom was kissing back at her, and then laying back down, and then smiling at her, and then laying back down. And it was like they didn't need words. They had it. They knew.
Wow. Yes.
They knew. And to this day, our Eden is very, very attached to my mom and her memory. She asks about her all the time. And how is Nanny Normie, and where is Nanny Normie? And Nanny Normie would like this, and Nanny Normie this and that. So,
sweet.
it's beautiful. And I think it's because they were at the same stage pretty much, right, at that point.
Yes.
And I love it. I find it really, really, really powerful. So thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
So, yeah. So you were going to read something for us?
I was going to read from the collection, and this is a poem by Pauletta Hansel, who was a former Cincinnati poet laureate. So, this is the quality of, we have so many different people who are wonderful poets and people who are new poets but have also done beautiful work. This is called The Blessing, and there's an epigraph that says, "If you're going to die, why don't you do it all at once and not this little bit of dying every day?" And this was said by a participant at a dementia caregiver workshop. And the poem starts with, "But mother, it is that bit of you, that stuttering spark, only those bent close enough can see, lighting the dark around you. I never would have known had death blazed full and hot and gone, no charred pieces left to quietly burn throughout our bundled days, the bellow of my breath against your skin. I just thought that
Nice.
really captured
Powerful.
for me also with my mom. There were many days I thought, oh, when will this end?
Right.
But I also was so grateful for the slow movement of it, because it definitely gave me a look into something I never expected in life.
Me too, 100%. I just had this conversation with another guest because I was talking about the difference between my mom's death and my father's death. My father died in a plane crash at 46, and it was like, boom, he's gone, done, that's it,
Right.
ripped out of life.
Yep.
And then my
Yes.
mother, 16 years of tiny deaths, and
Yes.
then getting to the end was the same thing, but that what was the line that you said just now? You said about the tiny, what did you say? Say it again. That was so beautiful.
Here it is. I never would have known, had death blazed full and hot and gone, no charred pieces left to quietly burn throughout our bundled days. Is that it? Or it is that bit of you, that stuttering spark.
Yes,
Only
the
those-
stuttering spark, yeah. That only those close enough to you would know. And that's what I
Yes.
used to say, and Don says it to me all the time, that I would look at my mom and go, oh, look at her, she's so happy there, she's so loving, and he'd go, it's funny because you know her so well that you see it.
Right.
And this
Right.
this happened throughout. You would say, I know, what's going on with my mom right now. Even when you would talk to the nurses or to say, I know what's happening with her. I see things that nobody else saw. That was, you would say, and you would, and you could tell because they were so connected.
Yeah, we were
And-
so connected. I could see her. Sometimes she'd look up like this because she was looking for the words to say to me, and because she'd go, and then I go, I know you're looking for the words, and they're there, and then they're gone, and they're there, and then they're
Yes.
gone. I go, take your time. I've got all day. I tell her, I'll wait for you, because I could feel her. I knew she had things to say.
Yes, my mom was the same way. She would say all these strange things, but because I'm a poet and I love metaphors, I would just interpret them. And she was
Right.
like, yes, you've got it. And
Yes.
but everyone else thought she was speaking crazy. And I was like, I totally understand her, even though her words don't make sense.
Yeah,
So-
it's not to infantilize them, and I said this last time we were talking about but that is in a way like children, because we know what our children are saying to us before they have their
Right.
language skills down, and we know though, oh, that's a hungry cry, that's a happy cry, that's a funny cry, that's
Yeah.
she's just whinging. We know, we
Yes.
know. And they don't have to say words, and then even when they're doing their babbling, we know what kind of babble it is. Why anybody would say they are gone, that
Right.
there's nothing there, is so disrespectful and so ignorant. And
They're just
that's
missing
why
so much.
they're missing so much. Yeah. Thank you for reading that.
Sure.
Sue, what do you have one more?
I do. This one is one from the anthology, not by me. We were talking about capturing a moment or a metaphor, and this one is about a moment of making and drinking tea. It's called Earl Grey. It's by a poet named Sandra Dries. Mom does not remember Earl Grey tea, that she prefers it, that she loves it. No sugar, just plain. Don't ruin it with lemon. God forbid milk. For all she knows, Earl Grey is a fine gentleman riding from his castle in the English countryside, galloping on his well-groomed steed. He halts by the rocky brook to adjust his fine felt hat. Mom, 93. My reminders, steady fuel, stoke the furnace of her runaway locomotive. But Mom, you love Earl Grey, your favorite. Really? I do? Well, okay, if you say so. Consider Earl Grey Mom's former sixth grader who threatened to kill himself, ran away from class, apprehended by police on the 59th Street Bridge. That, she claims, shortened her life by a year. Perhaps Earl Grey... No, he couldn't be an uncle. It's rare to find a Jewish uncle named Earl Grey, especially if he debarked to Ellis Island from a hellhole shtetl in Eastern Europe. The copper kettle shrieks, "Mom, unaware." I pour steaming tea and fill our porcelain cups with disbelief. Kitchen table. We sit before a plate of scones. Mom smiles. We steep.
Oh, that's beautiful too.
Because it's those one of the minutia. There's so much in the minutia sometimes.
Yeah, just a little thing like
that,
Earl Grey tea, which I also love.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And those are
I
the
love
things
it.
that, that when you go back, after you've lost somebody, and sometimes people are like, well, it's better that they went, they were suffering and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, but you probably would take maybe their worst moment right now if you could have it again than not having them at all, or take those and finding those and remembering those silly little moments are, there's so much to that. So it's wonderful.
I love that. We always relate it to our own experience, right? So all I can picture is my mom, who had more game than I ever had in my entire life with men. Like that, even in Alzheimer's, men loved her. Like she was just, I don't know, she's a magnet. And I can imagine going, "Mom, you love Earl Grey." "Oh, I know. I dated him twice." I can imagine her saying that.
Yeah. But we do
I couldn't get rid of him. She was like, but it was a pain in the ass. I couldn't get rid of him. I just know. There's so much in that. That's why I was laughing. It's so funny. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. This was so much fun and so meaningful, and really appreciate the time and appreciate what you guys, all three of you, are doing. Sharing, aggregating, bringing some culture to a very tumultuous, whatever the word is.
Tumultuous.
There you go. Thank you. Tumultuous world that we live in right now. So it's really needed, and you're just doing, as they say in French, a mitzvah. It's not French, it's Jewish.
Those French Jews. Is there anything else that you wanted to say or announce or anything before we say farewell?
I just wanted to invite everybody to visit AlzAuthors.com, and you will find hundreds of resources written from personal experience for your dementia journey. All the different care situations, different dementia types, different genres of books. We do virtual events, and you would be invited to attend and meet some of the authors on, we have to do it online, but we're there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. So we post
You'll be on all the notes,
information
all the
there.
show notes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have
Come
all that
find
info in the
us.
show notes. Yeah, you can't help but find them. They're everywhere.
We're around.
Yeah.
Not just for authors, it's readers too.
Yeah. Well,
Oh yeah, that's
we
what we're there
hope
for.
that-
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
If you're looking for books
you know,
on Alzheimer's, just come and check us out. You'll find the best ones.
Fabulous.
Well,
Great.
we love you, and it's
Thank you.
it goes with the theme of our show, which is
Yeah.
Dawn.
Yes.
Take it
Wow,
away.
that love is powerful, love is contagious, and love conquers all. We do thank everyone for watching, listening today. Please do definitely go check out AlzAuthors.com and like us and subscribe us. Please like us. We're very likeful.
Please, we
like
like-
us, subscribe.
we
All those
I
things.
have the disease
Share.
to please.
Yes. And we will absolutely see you next time. Take care,
Absolutely.
everybody.
Awesome.
Bye bye.
Thank you.